Good evening, YouTube. You guys are now watching another segment of the TheCaliEffect. Today, we're going to be talking about 5 archetypes or decks that are extremely underrated in this format. These decks show extreme properties or exert some type of special ability or something. They do something special that seems to get under the meta. Or, since a card or cards are absent in the meta, this deck can now thrive as a definite contender and it's definitely underrated. Right now, we're going to be talking about Black Garden. And as substitute, the Black Garden is used as substitute to be conferred as Chain Beat. Why? Because when I Google or Wikipedia Chain Beat, nothing came up. So, Black Garden is a really good deck, also known as Chain Beat. Some Chain Beat decks don't run Black Garden, but that's fine. The concept of it is to get your opponent to use their spells and trap cards and waste their spells and trap cards on these 2 cards that you run in your deck. There's only 6 monsters, sometimes 8. The 2 different monsters are Wind Up Rabbit and Evil Swarm Thunderbird. Now these monsters can activate their effects almost any given time when your opponent activates a trap card, or just any given time. That, being able to dodge your opponent's spells and trap cards, makes it extremely hard for them to be getting rid of, or even monster effects, actually, now that I think about it. Now, the biggest reason why this deck doesn't see a lot of play is because of, first, back row removal, and secondly, because sometimes it takes a little bit of a setup. Now, if you speed forward to the April 2014 format, the top deck right now is called Hats, which is artifacts, trap tricks, and hands put into one deck. This deck essentially dodges almost every single thing that deck can throw at it. It dodges the hands because you don't have to, you can chain all your back row, hence the name Chain Beat. All your back row is typically chainable. It dodges the artifact monsters because the artifact monsters need to destroy one of your monsters. Well, guess what? Your monster can banish itself to protect itself. Also, it dodges all of the trap tricks cards, all of the trap holes, just for the sole reason that they can't bottomless you because you'll just chain its effect. The deck is extremely good at creating mismatches like that. And also, when chain links start to accumulate, you can use Accumulated Fortune to gain advantage and draw cards. Cards like Needle Sealing in this deck are extremely good, and it just renders the artifact deck useless. I would play this deck for the rest of the format. Actually, I think I might play it in the tournament today, just because this deck creates so many mismatches for artifacts that it becomes extremely hard to get over. One more thing, for the Black Garden players that do play Black Garden inside of their Chain Beat deck, that is another great factor to slow artifacts down. All of their monsters will be half their attack. They're going to be extremely easy to get over, while your monsters, on the other hand, once they're banished and they decide to come back, they go back to their original attack, and Evil Storm Thunderbird goes up to 1950 for being banished. That alone should be able to get you to get over all of their opposing threats. A lot of their cards that they use aren't a threat at all, and this deck is just extremely good at creating that type of mismatch. Next would be Sylvans. Now, Sylvans didn't top in YCS Philadelphia, and I think that was a huge letdown for all Sylvan players who were expecting this deck to top. But do not give up hope. Sylvans are an extremely good deck at creating so many monsters and so much monster presence that can protect themselves that it's almost overwhelming, being able to exceed or synchro for high-level monsters that either protect themselves or grant some type of insane combos, like, for example, Dracosack, who protects himself and destroys cards on the field. Felgrand, who negates monsters' effects and protects whatever it negates. Leo, who prevents himself from being targeted. And then all the other Sylvan Exceeds that get you some insane, crazy things that you can do with this deck. This deck is extremely underrated, and I really feel that right now might not, as of right now, as of this second, might not be its time, but later on into the format, it should at least top, if not win, a couple of events. This deck is extremely good. Like I said, summoning so many monsters, it becomes overwhelming. Also, in-phase back row and monster destruction in the form of Martial Leaf and Mushroom, or whatever its name is pretty good because it prevents the artifact monsters. It prevents the artifact monsters' effects from happening as long as you destroy their back row on their turn. Not to mention that Gay Garunix, also known as Aurea, doesn't target. Anytime where you get an Exceed that returns but doesn't target, extremely good. But that's what really gets Sylvans over the hump. Its best matchup will probably be any deck as long as it doesn't have Maxis and Effect Veilers, which have been seeing a lot of play. But I think once those die down, Sylvans will start to become that great of a deck. Next is Kawaki Miru, which has been seeing a lot of tops over the past couple of weeks since Primal Origin's announcement. This deck is extremely good. Now, I'm not talking about all of the Quakimirus in one deck. I'm really not even talking about Rock Stun right about now. Right now, I'm talking about Beast Warrior Quakimaru, using Gear Knight, Crusader, Fire Fist Bear, Wolf Bard to create almost essentially a +1 Fire Fist deck. This deck is extremely good at dropping one card Exceeds and generating so much advantage it becomes next to impossible. That, and on top of the couple of sneaky Quakimaru cards that it has to destroy all your opponent's back row on their turn, makes it a genuine contender for getting over artifacts, for destroying all of the good Girgias and all of the good contender decks that run heavy back row. Now, the biggest thing that makes this deck so good is that if all else fails, use your Fire Fist cards. Bear is still a really good card, and Tiger King can negate everything on the field. This deck is extremely good at getting rid of back row, getting over back row, and then also on top of that, using a combination of one card rank 4 Exceeds to get over the opponent monster threats. The next card, or the next deck, or archetype you want to call it, is Gravekeeper. Now, Gravekeepers are extremely good. Now, they've become even better since a lot of people have started to drop MST from their main board and put them into the sideboard due to artifacts. Gravekeepers have essentially 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, around 7, it depends on how you play it, but at least 4 counter trap cards that can negate summons. Now, that is extremely good when you can just deny your opponent's summon 4 times at the very least. Almost like having 3 solemn warnings and a solemn judgment, which, oh my god, it's just stop summons galore. This deck is extremely good also at preventing the opponent from touching the graveyard, and the Girgia matchup prevents Girgag and X from going into its extended play, which could really hurt in the future once this deck starts to get on its grind game and your opponent starts to lose up on their monsters. This deck also creates soft locks, where if you can have Shaman on the board and Gravekeeper's Necro Valley on the field, it creates the opponent from basically touching their graveyard as well as getting over the Necro Valley. This deck exhibits a strong mismatch and destroys decks that are graveyard reliant. Now, the last deck I want to talk to you about are Spirits. Now, Spirit monsters are actually a subtype, but so they kind of don't classify under archetypes because they're a subtype, but they can still be considered as a deck. And when I'm talking about spirits, I'm not talking about don't mash up all of the spirits in one deck. More in particular, the fairy spirits, because those seem to be the best. They also combo really well with an effect negation card called Herald of Orange Light. They have Arc Lord Christie if they ever need it. They have the hands. They even can run artifacts. There's just so many possibilities with this deck. I think it's a genuine underrated deck, and it actually can create so many mismatches with the opponent. The biggest reason why spirits can do that is because the fairies versions, which most of them are fairies, can mix up very well with the cards that I said before. This deck is extremely good at taking your opponent's monsters through creature swap and even mystic boxing if you ever had to. I feel that this deck can genuinely be a solid high tier 2 deck. It wouldn't be able to run a format, but it's still a very fun deck to play. Thank you guys for watching another segment of the Cali Effect. I would like to know your 5 decks that you think that will be genuine contenders or just extremely underrated for this format. Please like, comment, subscribe, but most of all, enjoy.